serve you or please you. And so the United States government from the beginning, publicly and privately, was threatening to imprison me and other journalists who were working on the story. And the detention of my partner was, for me, probably the worst day, maybe of my life, but certainly of the last year. I mean, if you think about what they did, they took the person who's most important to me in the world, who I love the most, and deliberately targeted him instead of the journalist, and put him and locked him in a room for 11 hours under a terrorism law, and threatened the entire day that they would arrest him and put him in a prison in London, where I couldn't have access to him. Brazilian diplomats all day were denied access to even find out what was being done. And then it turned out, unsurprisingly, that the U.S. government knew ahead of time that the British intended to do that. The reason they did it is because they had been monitoring and surveilling our conversations. And I think it indicates what the strategy of the U.S. and the U.K. governments are to anybody who tries to challenge them, which is to intimidate, to put you in fear, in the case of my partner, to actually threaten to criminally prosecute. There are actually, though, a lot of journalists who work with much less visibility than this story, who are confronted with far worse threats and greater dangers all the time. One of the great things about the last year is I've had the opportunity to get to know a lot of journalists who do this kind of work, and this is how people in power try and respond to those who challenge them. But I do think it's interesting that the U.S. government and the British government like to parade around the world as the defender of free press and criticizing other countries for attacking journalists, and yet that was their strategy from the beginning. But, you know, if you are convinced that what you're doing is right, and this was sort of the lesson I learned from Edward Snowden, you have to take some precautions, the precautions that you can take, and then the best thing you can do against people who are trying to be intimidating that way is to work as hard as you can against them and ignore the risks. And, you know, ultimately I think that proved to be successful in this case.
Charles, eu queria falar com você sobre o fato de você ter ganhado o Oscar, que você segundo, se não me engano, foi com o seu segundo filme, Trabalho Interno, simplesmente ganhou o Oscar, o maior prêmio da área, é o Oscar de documentário. E o filme foi transformado depois em livro, numa versão aumentada, que é o Sequestro da América, como as corporações financeiras corromperam os Estados Unidos. E ele aumenta a pesquisa, faz um adendo aí, né? Mudar para a sua carreira de cineasta, certamente foi ótimo ter ganhado o Oscar, te deu certeza de prosseguir nos seus projetos. Você logo em seguida começou um documentário sobre a Hillary Clinton, sempre cotada como provável presidente, candidata a presidente dos Estados Unidos, e interrompeu esse projeto. Eu queria saber por que você interrompeu.
Yes. Well, it turns out that there's a quite substantial downside to being famous. So when I won the Oscar and made the speech that I made on television, I pointed out when I got the Oscar, I pointed out that there had been no criminal prosecutions and said that was wrong. And so everybody knew my face and my work, and so and the good side of that is that I've been offered a lot of very interesting work, and including the film that I'm now making, which is about climate change and sustainability and energy globally, very ambitious film. So I was offered several things, and one of the things that I was offered was to make a documentary about Hillary Clinton, which I thought was a very interesting project. And so I started, and CNN, which was the organization that offered me the job. One thing that I will say is that I would say, to a large degree, I agree with Glenn's comments about the nature of the media in the United States. The media has become very complacent and very part of the problem and very captured by power and money. No question about that. But not completely. There are still, even in large companies that are owned by conglomerates, there are still organizations and people that try to do serious, good, critical, honest work. And so CNN, which is a very establishment channel, offered to fund on very generous terms my making a documentary about Hillary Clinton. And they gave me final cut. They gave me complete editorial control over the film. And everybody was very nice and very supportive, including even after, as we say in the United States, the shit hit the fan. So Hillary Clinton has, and the Clintons, the Clinton family, they have a well-developed intelligence apparatus. And the day that the contract was signed, I got a phone call from Hillary Clinton's press secretary saying, "Mr. Ferguson, we understand you're making a film." And there began an extraordinary journey, and that journey was basically me versus the Clintons. Now, you know, in general, and in every other situation that I've encountered, including my first film, which was about the occupation of Iraq, where I spent a month in occupied Iraq in 2006, very dangerous place, not a garden spot, and I did that without any U.S. government or military support. I hired at my own expense. I spent $250,000 on my personal security and the security of my film team. I had 15 armed guards everywhere I went. So, you know, I'm used to circumstances in which somebody doesn't want me to find something out. And in fact, I love it. There's nothing that I love more when I come to understand that somebody doesn't want me to learn something. When I find that out, I just think, "Ooh, yum!" And it's so, you know, sometimes making these films, even in the grimmest of circumstances, and believe me, Iraq was very grim, even in the grimmest of circumstances, it can be very interesting and very enjoyable, and I usually find out what I want to know. The Clintons were an amazing exception. I met a wall of silence that I have never encountered elsewhere in my life, ever. I spoke to hundreds of people. About 6 of them agreed to speak with me off the record privately, and 2 agreed to be interviewed on camera. So I thought, you know, I could make some kind of movie, but could I make a movie that I was proud of? Could I make a movie that I thought really got to the heart of the matter? Could I make a movie that anybody would want to watch? So I decided no, so I quit. And now I'm making another movie, which I'm very excited about.
Qual é o seu novo filme, então, que você está trabalhando? Que filme é esse que você está fazendo?
So I'm making a film about the global challenge of climate change and, more broadly, sustainability, both energy and land use, and very globally. I've spent 6 months doing research, and we've just started filming. We've already done some filming in the United States and in Europe. We're going to be filming in Brazil for several weeks. I'm also going to be filming in Indonesia, in China, in several countries in Africa. Kenya is the first one. And I have to say it has been an amazing, amazing trajectory. And here, too, I have come across a gigantic and, in this case, very positive surprise, which is that, surprise to me anyway, which is that this is a solvable problem. If we were to decide that we wanted to deal with the climate problem and the energy problem and the food problem, we could. We know how to. And the costs and characteristics of wind power and solar power and other renewable energy are now such that if you include the costs of pollution from conventional energy, we would probably actually save money and make our lives better if we converted to renewable energy and sustainable agriculture. And I hope to be able to bring that message to a very large number of people because it's an important message. And, you know, this place where we are now, this is the most beautiful place on earth. Please don't let it be ruined. And
o seu filme vai ser lançado em outubro de 2015, é isso? No final do ano que vem. Temos uma pergunta aqui para você também, do Roberto Teixeira da Costa, que é nosso conselheiro. Ele está dizendo, mais de 100 bilhões de dólares foram depositados por instituições financeiras como penalidade pela gestão financeira que originou a crise de 2008. Considera essas multas suficientes para cobrir os prejuízos causados? Aí tem uma segunda pergunta que The Volcker Law, que proíbe os bancos de ter carteiras próprias, é uma medida na direção correta?
Well, first, as to the first question, the total size of fines that have been levied against all financial institutions globally since the 2008 crisis, it probably has reached $100 billion by now. And you might think that that's a lot of money, but it turns out it's not. And most of those fines were not for behavior related to the financial crisis, because what happened in the wake of the financial crisis was that it became clear, partially through losses caused by the financial crisis, a lot of other behavior was revealed, and it turned out that the banking industry globally, not just in the United States, in fact some European banks were among the worst offenders, it turned out that the large banks had been committing a considerable number of crimes, not just related to the financial crisis, but also related to conspiring to fix exchange rates, conspiring to fix interest rates, and also violating anti-terrorism regulations related to money laundering on a massive scale. It turned out that European banks and even some American banks had been involved in transferring large quantities of money on behalf of Iran, North Korea, Sudan, nations that, really are not doing nice things. And a lot of the fines related to that behavior. Most of those fines in the United States are tax deductible, by the way. So the banks get to take the money off of their tax payments, which is kind of extraordinary. But I find humor where it's obtainable, and sometimes it's in unexpected places. There have been various estimates of the total size of the losses associated with the financial crisis. The best estimates that I've seen are in the neighborhood of 25, 30, 40 trillion dollars, not billion dollars, trillion dollars. So $100 billion in fines isn't a lot in the first place, and in the second place, it's only a small fraction of the profits that the financial sector has made over the last decade. The financial sector is very profitable.
E quanto a,
the second question about the Volcker Law. The Volcker Law, it's nice, but it turns out that it's very detailed and very complicated, and there are many exceptions and many exclusions, and banks have been given delays, they've been given regulatory exemptions, they've been given exceptions of various kinds. There's no visible enforcement, nobody's been prosecuted for violating it. So I can't say that the reforms, quote unquote, in the wake of the financial crisis really have encouraged me a great deal. I don't think that there will be another crisis like this soon, because people still remember the last crisis and they're being a little more careful. So it'll be another decade before people kind of forget and the bankers invent something new, and but we could face another problem like this again in the future.
Eu queria fazer uma pergunta para o Glenn, que veio aqui da plateia, do André Laurentino. Ele pergunta: como expor a má conduta da CIA e da NSA sem, no entanto, revelar aos terroristas informações sobre a segurança nacional? Isso foi um questionamento que você recebeu nos Estados Unidos particularmente, né? Eu queria te perguntar também se você acredita numa transparência total, se há segredos de Estado que devem ser preservados ou não. E também queria te perguntar sobre essa controvérsia que houve. Houve um ímpeto muito grande em chamar você de ativista e não de jornalista, né? Assim que estourou o escândalo, vários comentaristas começaram: não, mas ele é um ativista, ele não é um jornalista. O que significa essa terminologia em termos concretos, né?
So first of all, the first question,